Morning. Good morning and welcome to McAfee and Taft Healthcare Reform Seminar. And we want to thank everyone for joining us. This is our second day. We did the same seminar yesterday in Oklahoma City. We're going to have a total of over 700 people registered for both cities. If I could get everybody to separate on alternating seats, please. Because half of the people are still somewhere out on the Broken Arrow Expressway trying to get here. But seriously, this is our second seminar that McAfee and Taft has put on the issue of healthcare reform. We did one back in 2010, immediately after the Affordable Care Act was passed by Congress. And at that point, it was kind of a moving target because we knew it was going to be subject to appeal and attack Supreme Court. We thought the Supreme Court's decision this summer, upholding by and large that act, was a very good time to revisit that issue. So what we've tried to do today in our program is put together a team of experts, people that do this all the time, with the idea of really giving you a very practical idea of not only what's coming up and what you need to do, but what that timeline looks like for you. And we want to start with a very important point. This is a very complicated law. It is absolutely brand new. We're still feeling our way along this. All the experts are. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. A lot of your decisions are going to be driven as much by economic concerns as legal concerns. So what we hope to accomplish today is give you some idea and some sensitivities to the kind of issues you're going to be facing, what sort of decisions and options you'll have, both from an economic standpoint and from an employment standpoint. But don't be surprised if some of our panel members and some of our speakers say, look, there's a couple ways this can go, or those regulations and those interpretations are still evolving, and here's our best advice on how to get there and what your options are going to be. One of the themes I think you'll hear today from everyone is, again, it's not one size fits all. You're going to be driven by economic concerns and what makes sense for your workforce, what makes sense for your employees in terms of attracting and retaining good employees, and emphasizing how important it is for you to work as a team. That means working as a team with your HR folks, your financial people, your lawyers, God forbid, your insurance consultants, your benefits consultants. It really is a team approach. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to our esteemed employee benefits panel. I'm not an employee benefits lawyer, so I'd prefer you not watch me. I'll be in the back taking more notes than anybody in this room, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Most of the people on the panel here and the other two panels later on today, we've been in the employee benefits business for me for 27 years. This is the most complicated, this is the good news, this is the most complicated act I've ever read, not just in this area, anywhere. It's so comprehensive. It's 3,000 pages, and it's a game changer as it relates to health care. It just is. For those that have come and listened to us in the past, our spiel, if you will, was, look, you need to get a good team and make sure you're doing the right things. And that was, at that point, it was kind of optional. If you wanted to keep using who you were using as a consultant or the others, maybe you could have gotten a better pricing, or maybe there were some other options out there if you would have gone and had a team that was evaluating, et cetera, but it wasn't. Now it's not optional. What's happened here is the healthcare world as we know it has changed to a point where there's penalties associated with not doing certain things right. You've got to make a decision now whether you want to pay or play. Do you even want to be in the healthcare business? That sounds easy. We'll talk about it in the second panel. It's not easy because it's not just an economic decision that you're going to have to make. You're going to have to make a decision from, okay, how is it that we're going to attract and retain the best employees? What are my competitors doing? And if it's local, regional, national, how does that play? And if you do, Our advice that will be consistent with what you've heard in the past is, since the answer to the question for every employer truly will be dependent upon your facts and will vary, make sure you get all the facts and get everything on the table. And on a 3,000-page act, that makes it more complicated and more difficult to do. But it is doable. It is frustrating. And first of all, this act didn't break health care. Health care was already in trouble. For all of us that have been in the industry for a long time, our health care costs have been going up for a long time. One of the advantages of the act is it is forcing us to deal with certain things that we've historically tried to avoid. We've made it easy, maybe rightfully so, we could debate that, for our participants to use our health plan. $10 co-pays. They never really saw how much it costs. We were subsidizing a lot of their premiums. If it went up, a lot of times the employers, you would come and you would get recommendations from people, and they go, there'd just be too much noise if we do this or do that. We're kind of comfortable, and I think financially everything's going to be all right, so let's do that next year. And as a result, over a period of time, our participants really have no idea the magnitude and the cost of health insurance for the employers. And so one of the things this is going to do, and is going to force us to do, that we believe is a good thing, is we're all going to be on the same page. Communication, education is going to be paramount to this. Because historically, if the employer did something that the employees believed they were taking a benefit away, it was an incredibly negative connotation, and they felt like any change was, okay, this is to benefit the employer, and this hurts me, and therefore that's not right. No matter what happens here, because of the way this is structured, unless you do some planning, if you did your same plan next year and the next few years as you've done in the past, your health care costs are going up. This was not a reform bill. It didn't reform health care. It expanded it. I'm not saying that in a negative way. It just expanded it. More people are eligible. Lifetime limits have gone away. There's penalties and costs, and we'll talk about some of those in this panel as well as the second and third panel. But the costs are up on this. And when you look at the budgetary aspect of this and the way Congress had anticipated paying for this, they're assuming you're not going to do anything. You're just going to sit there and take those additional costs. And our charge to you today, and if you take anything away from that, you need to get an incredibly educated team with you, outside folks. Is that self-serving for lawyers? Yes. But the consultant is going to play a big role in this. Your accountant is going to play a big role in this. You've got to get people around you to evaluate so that you know what your options are and what is this going to truly cost me. So if you take that away, then we've done our job here. If you're a little bit scared when you walk out of here, we've really done our job. Because we're really scared right now. Because we're trying to evaluate this and try and determine, again, think about as we work with you, we want to be specific as to your situation. And it truly does cause every single employer to look at it differently and evaluate it differently. So the first panel today, we're going to talk about that. We're probably going to be about 40,000 feet talking about, I'll tell you what we're not really going to talk about. We're really not going to talk about how we got here too much. It's irrelevant. We're here. Let's spend our time going forward. And so the first panel, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about at 40,000 feet. The second panel, we're going to talk about the pay or play. And there'll be a 15-minute break in between. Pay or play. The specifics of that. What should you be evaluating? Because a lot of employers, when they first saw this, their initial reaction said, fine, I'm out. If the government's going to get in my kitchen, I'm going to get out of this business. I'll pay the penalty, pay the tax, whatever you want to call it. The problem is that may work, but it may not. You need to look at the facts. And then the third panel, what we're going to do in that one is really get down to the nitty-gritty on some of the other flexible spending accounts. What impact does that have? W-2 reporting, some of the things along those lines. So right now, Bill Frudenrich, Todd Neves with Premier Source, and I do want to say this before I turn it over to Bill. I want to thank our marketing department right now. Our marketing department, when the Supreme Court made their decision, they immediately, working with us in the benefits practice group, we sent out an email blast. But they were responsible for putting that together, sending it out. Within 90 minutes, we had 300 people signed up. You want to know why the title of this is Now What? Everyone's kind of going, okay, now what do we do? We probably put some four-letter words on both sides of that. So they've done a phenomenal job putting this together. We had over 500 sign up in Oklahoma City. We had about 360 in Tulsa here. I mean, you guys are busy, but this is important. And as a result of that, we appreciate what they have done and are doing for this. Jim Prince is our practice group leader for the benefits and executive comp practice group, and he's been responsible for helping put this together. Jim's going to be sitting on the second panel today. Unbelievable job and incredibly time-consuming over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and really 3 or 4 weeks, and we appreciate that. The last is Premier Source. Todd and Tia Corley, who are the two principals of Premier Source, we needed to get and continue to get feedback from the consulting side for us so we can do a better job from the legal side of things. And they've been invaluable as they approach this new act from their end and coordinating with them to figure out so that there needs to be overlap. We can't have any holes in the process. So I want to thank Todd and T as it relates to that. So with that, Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Richard. I'm going to basically talk about the timeline, what you have to do today. I'm going to be at 40,000 feet, and then in the next 2 sessions, we're going to drill down to some of those exciting topics of how you report this on your W-2 and how you actually calculate the tax. Where are we today? Well, since March 30th, 2010, we've had what they call the PPACA. Now we refer to it as ACA. But since 2010, we've been dealing with this horrendous law. Okay, well, really, what is the core of healthcare reform? Number one, it's the expansion of the state Medicaid. That's key. State of Oklahoma, they haven't decided whether they're going to elect into the state Medicaid expansion program. Originally, the states were going to have to pay for that, but now the federal government is going to pick up and pay for that cost also. So again, they're going to cover 90% of all the cost. We're going to have the state exchanges. And again, the state of Oklahoma hasn't decided if they're going to sponsor a state exchange. If they don't sponsor a state exchange, we'll have a federal exchange. So there will be some type of exchange in 2014. Also, the key to this exchange is for certain people above the poverty level, they're going to have the ability to get a credit on the exchange. Now, let me just talk about that. There's been a lot of miscommunication about this credit. Oh, all of my employees, low-paid employees, are going to leave. They're going to go to the exchange, and they're going to get this credit. The only way they're going to qualify for the credit is if you don't offer a plan, or if your plan's not affordable. That's the only way they're going to be able to go get the credit. So it's not going to be a mass exodus of your employees going to the exchange to get this credit. Okay, where are we? This is what you need to be doing right now. 2012, the Uniform Summary of Benefits and Explanation of Coverage. Brandon's going to cover this later. Actually, this is basically a 6 to 8 page summary of your benefits, okay? I don't think this is bad. A lot of our larger employers, they've been doing this for years. But you need to be working on this now because this is going to be important for your renewal that comes up in 2013. We have preventive services for women. W-2 reporting. Now that's a big one. And Allison's going to cover that in detail. But for your 2012 W-2s, you're going to have to report the cost of the total cost of the coverage that for your plan. Basically, that's going to be your COBRA cost. So if you haven't met with your payroll provider, or if you don't have that programming done, you're going to need to get on that ASAP. Also, for 2012, the maximum flexible spending account for healthcare expenses is going to be limited to $2,500 a year. And that's going to be covered in the later sessions. Now, you don't have to have your document updated now, but you will in the future. So for 2012, there's a few things you need to be working on, but those aren't too tough. Now, let's talk about 2013. You need to get ready for the upcoming year. Now, we had this notice of exchange. The notice of exchange is supposed to go out at the end of this quarter. Anybody sent out their notice of exchange? Because we don't have the notice from the DOL and HHS to prepare the notice to send out. So we don't know when those have to be sent out. That date has been extended, and hopefully we will have that model notice sometime before the end of the year. Because that is, Todd?
Yeah, I was just going to ask too, and applicable to this slide, to what we're discussing today.
Right.
How many of you all have maintained grandfather status or abdicated that a long time ago? How many have maintained grandfather status? So okay, so probably, I mean, like, you know, we had discussed this before. I mean, just the fact that so many plans today over time, and I would say probably based on the hands that were raised, we still probably have 80% of you who have or more who have gotten rid of that grandfathered status piece. I mean, that is something that we'll be discussing a little bit later, but as you'll see with some of these slides as we discuss this, you'll see so many things that are still applicable. I'm just curious too, because we have so many groups that have discussed whether or not over the last 2 years, what necessarily applies to them. What's it going to look like? We're going to talk about the exchanges in a minute as well. I'm going to address most of that, but I was just curious how, as Bill started getting into these slides, how many, and really it kind of confirms what we've seen and what we've heard as well, is that so many people have just said, you know, it was impossible for us to maintain that piece of grandfathering. So I was just curious what that looked like.
Okay. The next tax, and we have the taxes spread out all through this presentation. One of the taxes that we're going to use to help pay for this expanded coverage is a PPACA fee. The PPACA fee is going to be assessed against all plan sponsors. And it's basically, and Brandon Long is going to get into those details, but those will be due next July. We also have an increased Medicare tax starting in 2013, basically for a single employee who's not filing jointly. If your income's above $200,000, you're going to be assessed an additional Medicare tax. Also in 2013, the Medicare Retiree Part D subsidy, those subsidies will no longer be on a tax-free basis. Okay, 2014, this is where the pain really starts. Okay, now...
You know, Bill, as you get into there, I do want to share one quick...
Okay.
We got an email from one of our clients a couple of days ago, and they had signed up, and they said, well, I went into our boss, and the boss said, you know, we're going to wait to get any information on this act because there's just so much that still needs to come. So don't waste your time going to the seminar. There's really not a whole lot you can do right now. And we looked at them, and I sent an email. Fortunately, I'm good friends. And I said, you know, that is a plan. It's not a very good plan because right now, as Bill's just gone over, the idea, yes, 2014 is where the pain begins, but the planning and the cost containment measures and the processes need to start today. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to have this seminar is, notwithstanding some of this being pushed out, you don't want to wait to evaluate and adjust to that then. You want to be very proactive. They've gotten proactive with the act, and we've got to get proactive in our planning processes.
Right. Well, and to address that, we have 85% of the information that we need and guidance to move forward. Now, on a monthly basis, we're getting clarifications from the IRS, from HHS, and there's a few things that haven't been issued, like the model exchange notice, but we have the tools, we have the law, now it's time to comply. I mean, waiting is going to get you into a really tough situation if you wait. Now, Jim and John are going to spend a lot of time talking about part-timers and independent contractors, and that's just an added level of complexity.
Well, Bill, so many times, I'm sorry, Bill, but so many times that we have had meetings with different clients or different employees, since this has been signed in 2010, so many people just took that same stance. So to your point about planning, so many people took the same stance of, let's just wait to see what the Supreme Court does. Let's wait to see what the Supreme Court does. Well, the Supreme Court did. So now it's time to do. Now it's time to get moving, and it's time to start moving.
Now the default is, well, let's see what the election looks like in November, and then maybe that will be the cure-all, et cetera. we've got a number of sources that we work with out of Washington. And the fact of the matter is, if you get the Republicans behind closed doors, they will tell you that they're, notwithstanding the repeal, it's really replace in their mind. We don't know what it would look like even if they won, but the cat's already out of the barn. I mean, it's out there. Healthcare reform is here, and yeah, there may be some tweaks no matter what happens, but the idea that there's going to be some, if you will, savior that comes at the last second to get us back to where we were, which wasn't great, it's not going to happen. So that's why we've got to. The Supreme Court was the last one really that could have just thrown it all in chaos. Honestly, if you read Roberts, I know that's a geeky thing, but if you did, the man's brilliant. He was right. This is the right result, and now we're having to deal with it. And good for you for being here on a proactive basis.
Okay. First issue: employer shared responsibility. Circle that. That's when you leave this seminar today, you need to understand that topic. And our whole session 2, that's all it's going to cover is which employers are subject to this pay or play tax, and how do you calculate the pay or play tax. And then Jim Prince has done a great job on a worksheet saying, hey, I'm just going to drop my health insurance, I'm going to pay the tax. Well, it's not that easy. And he has a worksheet that goes through and does the financial analysis of whether, and you can take it to your board of directors, you can take it to your CFO and say, this is what it costs if we don't want to comply and want to pay the tax. So that's the most important topic we're going to cover in today's seminar. Auto enrollment. We don't have the regulations on auto enrollment. There's a lot of questions on whether you're going to have to enroll the whole family, if it's going to be single coverage. We're waiting on those regs. The 90-day waiting period. The 90-day waiting period. That starts in 2014. Again, with a lot of our groups that have a lot of part-timers, they have like a 6-month wait, or they have a 90-day wait on the plan. That's going to have to be changed. And what I mean by 90 days, that can't mean that, hey, I have a 90-day waiting period. No, it's truly counting 90 days. So if I have a 90-day waiting period, it could be almost 120 days if I'm hired at the last of the month. So generally, you're going to have to change that to a 60-day waiting period at the most. Okay, wellness incentives. If you have a surcharge for smoking, or if you have another type of wellness surcharge that's tied to an incentive-based plan, that 20% corridor is moving to 30% in 2014. That will also be indexed in the future, we believe, all the way to 50%. And we don't know when that will be indexed, but the regs allow an index to 50%. So if you're a smoker, 3-4 years from now, you could be paying 50% of your cost of your premiums as a surcharge. And again, we've covered smoking in a lot of our seminars. We're not going to cover that today. But if anyone has any questions or needs any help on putting together a smoking policy, we can help you with that. Okay, here's the high-cost plan tax. I said we have most guidance. We don't have guidance on the high-cost plan tax. We know the cost of the high-cost plan tax is going to be $12 billion. That's going to be a tax assessed against both fully insured plans and self-insured plans. It's going to be $12 billion, but we're not sure how it's going to be calculated, okay? But that will be assessed against you in 2014. Actually, the insurance carrier pays it on a fully insured plan, and the TPA pays it on a self-insured plan. It's $12 billion. It's going to be indexed to $20 billion by 2018. We don't have the details. But when you're adding up all your taxes that you're going to be paying going forward, this is one of those taxes.
But that's part of the planning process, because
right.
all of these calculations, all these numbers, all the part that they sent to the government to evaluate how they were going to pay for this plan assumed, again, you weren't going to do anything. So if you evaluate, and once we get some additional guidance on how they're calculating the tax and on whom, the question then becomes back to you, what can we do to move 2014 to maybe 2016 or 2018? You may want to sit still. You may want to pay the tax, but do it with your eyes wide open.
Right.
Evaluate what you could do, and okay, so what would I have to adjust on the plan, or what would I need to do in order to not pay that tax in 2014?
Now, you're going to have to pay this tax.
I know.
The pay or play tax you may not have to pay. Now, don't get this confused with the Cadillac tax, because in 2017, if you have a plan that provides a certain level of benefit, it's going to be a Cadillac tax, another tax. We're not covering that today because that doesn't come into play until 2017. And again, 2014, we're waiting on some final regulations on essential health benefits that have to be covered under your plan. Now, there's some items out there: chiropractic care, durable medical equipment. There's a couple other items, Todd, that we're not really, some of the biometrics. We're not sure exactly what's covered under essential health benefits totally, but we know what the core is going to be.
Overall ambulatory patient services, obviously hospitalization, things that you all pretty much already have in your plan for the most part.
Right.
Especially when you have been in a position where most of you have let loose of that grandfathered status. You have things that already are in your plan. We'll talk about that further as it relates to actuarial value. I think that's going to be somewhat critical, but when it relates to essential benefits, essential health benefits, we'll have some other things that we'll need to go through, but there are some other items as well: newborn, mental health and substance use care, that type of thing.
What's next? State of Oklahoma needs to decide whether they're going to offer an exchange, if that exchange is going to be the federal exchange, or if they're going to team up with another state. Also, the state of Oklahoma has to decide whether they're going to opt out of the Medicaid reimbursement subsidy. Now, why would we opt out of that? Why are we going to turn down this big subsidy from the federal government? I'm not sure, but our governor keeps talking about how she's not going to accept it, but I don't want to talk about any political issues today. Okay. Here's the key as we move forward. Here's the question, and we have some charts on this. Okay, how important really is it to provide health insurance to your employees? There's a new wave of thinking. You know, if I have high-value key employees, they just feel like that's an entitlement. Okay, now it's expensive. I mean, employees moan and groan and complain, saying, well, you know, I'm in this network. You don't have every doctor in the state of Oklahoma in my network. And what do you mean I had to pay a $16 copay for my drug? Okay? It's a new change. And we have a consultant that we work with on the West Coast out of San Diego, and especially on that West Coast, California area where the economy is so bad, employers are like, oh, no, we're not paying for this anymore. We're going to charge the maximum out-of-pockets. We're going to put in high-deductible health plans. Oh, we're not putting any money in an HSA to help subsidize that. What we see in Oklahoma with our employers is still this entitlement thought process. I got to provide it. I got to have the premier network. And I think right now you're going to start the times are changing. Even with our own health plan at McAfee Taft, we're slowly making some changes.
You have to look at it. You
Right.
have to look at it, and what happens is the dialogue ends up being, in some cases, between the CFO and HR. In the HR, you're going, okay, we can't keep our people, or we can't attract the right people if we're not offering this. And the CFO saying, yeah, but because of the cost, we can't continue.
Right.
And but one of the negatives aspects of that, you've got a lot of people who already have a pretty busy day job having these discussions back and forth, when what the ideal scenario would be, if they're in the widget making business, they'd be spending more time talking about planning and evaluating how they can go sell more widgets. And we're spending a lot more time on this aspect of things.
Right.
Yeah, this to me, I mean, a lot of what the slides were before really relates and addresses things that probably most of you, if you have gone through this act as it was signed, and when we first started dealing with this, March 23rd of 2010, you have dealt with this. You've heard these terms. You've heard these issues that have been brought up. But again, I would say as it relates to play or pay, now we're starting to deal with the things that we all kind of anticipated we'd be at this day, unless, depending on what Supreme Court does, we would be at this day at some point in time. Well, again, we are here at this stage. We are here at this decision-making situation of, are you going to be a part of this, or are you going to allow your employees to go another direction? I think that this slide, or now the previous slide, sorry, Bill, I think that this slide, to me, gives you all a sense of questions that are going to need to be asked. And now we're getting to that place that we start getting to strategic thought. Now is the place where you all really need to start looking at, again, and to Bill's point before, taking certain things away from this presentation. If you're going to take anything away from this piece, it's that strategic planning piece that needs to be thought through. This piece here, to me, of asking your employees, how important is it? We'll talk about this in some other slides too, but how do you all view your employees? How do you view benefits as it relates to compensation, as it relates to really much more than just the way the employees might take it? Attracting, retaining employees, of course, we all talk about that. But that piece, though, is really a bigger issue. And I think that's where you're going to see things that are going to be very important to you all as planners of your benefit plans. How does it relate to you all as a business? What does it do to your business culture to not have a plan in place? These are, obviously things that sometimes when you get down to the minutia of the issue, you get down into the weeds of just being able to afford it, we don't talk about culture. But really, you need to start looking at this in a bigger picture. How does it relate to you all as a business? When this was first signed, the economy was not in a good position. It's still not. But certainly when it was signed, when it was cussed and discussed in 2008, we were in a really, really bad position. And so the easy way out for all employers would be, we're getting rid of this thing. That'd be the easiest way out that we can go. But we didn't think through the other parts of this, that now that's reducing compensation that employees are getting today. If you're spending anything on employees' plans, there's compensation that's being reduced. How are the employees going to react to that? Now I just got a pay reduction, possibly. These are things that I think just need to be discussed. And I think that, as we talked about containing costs, I think that's also going to be a big issue that we'll discuss further when we talk about some strategies at the end.
Okay. Here's our key point today. Take this away with you. You're not going to have to pay this 2014 tax if you provide a plan that provides minimal essential health benefits, or you don't contribute enough toward the cost of the coverage. Okay? What is minimal essential health benefits? That's basically a 60% actuarial value. Well, how do I do that? Well, there are calculators being prepared by HHS and the IRS where you can go in and say, okay, I cover this under my plan, this is my deductible, this is my copay, and out of that, this is how much I charge for the premiums. And you put all these information into these calculators, and it's going to come back and it's going to tell you where you stand. I guarantee you, I have 95% of you in this room cover plans that have actuarial values of 70, 80, 85%. Okay? But this is the new thought. Actually, the federal government is encouraging you to offer plans that aren't quite so rich. Okay? So, that's the key on the first one. Okay? And the second one, Jim Prince is going to get, what's not affordable coverage? Basically, if the cost of premiums are 9.5% greater than the earnings of the employee for self-coverage. But he'll cover that.
One thing I will mention as far as the actuarial value, that's a piece that is really just, if you look at it and you break down actuarial value, simply stated that it's just the financial protection of your plan. How does that relate? Your medical spend within a given population, how then is that broken out to the overall spend? Most typical PPO plans will run about 80% or so actuarial value in kind of strength, the financial protection it gives. The other 20% of that plan is what's the employee's responsibility. That's one way to kind of think through actual value, just to kind of give kind of further aspects to that is how you look at actuarial value. So to Bill's point of really when we're looking at 60% actuarial value, I don't know, I wouldn't think of a plan necessarily that would even be in that situation. Actuarial value, again, the financial strength of your plan, I would venture to say that the vast majority of you are in a position where you're well above that. And I think from the overall plans, when you get into individual coverage too, individual coverages, you could have some plans that are $5,000 deductibles that don't have a drug card and it's just catastrophic care only. Those are the plans that don't have the same actuarial value. They don't have the same financial strength. Most of that financial responsibility is put back on the employee or the individual in that case. Okay. So.
And another key, if you're sitting here today and you employ 25 employees, you don't have to worry about this pay or play tax, okay? However, John Peperonis is going to talk about how do I calculate whether if I have 50 more employees. If you have part-timers and if you have independent contractors, the calculation is incredibly complex on how you do full-time equivalents, and he's going to talk to you about that. And after he goes through it, you're going to want to stick needles in your eye if you have a lot of part-time employees, okay? Okay, exchanges. I'm going to turn this over to Todd, and he's going to talk about exchanges and what we're doing in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think that just real briefly, and I know we need to move on here as well as far as time is concerned. But when you look at the exchanges, obviously that's been a very I don't know, to some degree, a huge buzzword through this whole process and through the last 2 years on how are we going to address the exchange issue. Oklahoma obviously took the stance of we're going to wait again to see what the Supreme Court does. We're going to give back the $54 million that was allocated to us. We have the opportunity to go into a federal exchange and make that our choice. We'll talk about this further. I guess if I was going to address anything on this slide, I would say that something that is important as it relates to exchanges is that this overall exchange piece is going to be something that is going to be available to those employers 1 to 100 lives, okay? So if you're looking at it as an option for you as an employer, you got to really be in that small employer group if you consider in the state of Oklahoma anything less than 100 lives small. But that is something that we have to look at. But as it relates to individuals and the way it relates to all of us is if you decide to pay, if you decide to not play in this market, you decide to move out of the health insurance arena as an employer, it's not important to you, then now that individual employee is going to go into this type of situation. As I would say, and something that's important we'll see in other slides as it relates to these exchanges, this piece is going to be the single source, if you will, the single source contact for everyone. They're going to have to deal with that. The exchange itself is going to have to deal with the evaluation of Medicaid eligibility. They're going to have to deal with the eligibility factors that as it relates, you'll see as we have on the slide, we had 60% actuarial value. We talked about that. There'll be different choices of plans that an individual will be able to choose from. So this is something that right now the state of Oklahoma, and the argument was a while back, have we kind of as a state kind of painted ourselves in a corner and not had the opportunity to kind of design something on our own. We have the opportunity to partner with another state. That was kind of discussed a little bit. But for the most part now, the legislatures have talked about, is Insure Oklahoma that vehicle, if you will, to be able to carry this exchange piece. So the state of Oklahoma is having to deal with a lot of things as far as as it relates to whether or not we're going to be in that exchange market as well. The flexibility piece, as we talked about, partnering with other states. I think as far as overall functions, again, when you really look at this piece and what you see the exchanges doing, you'll see them being, again, that single source, that single point of contact for all things related to the exchange. It truly will be something where, as an employer, you're getting out of that business. You're getting out of the eligibility business. You're getting out of the worrisome aspects of the exchange and health insurance as well. So that's something I think is important for you all as you walk through this. The pieces on the next slide, Bill, as we have for qualified health plans, basically there are still some things that could be still looked at and some flexibility. How are the exchanges going to be set up? I think that's something that still has to be determined. Is it going to be set up to where there's a competitive process in place, where an employee, or in this case a member, I guess, or an individual, can go out and find different opportunities, different carriers that are going to be a part of an overall state exchange? You hear a lot of consultants today. There are a lot of individual consulting companies that have come out and they've offered their own exchanges. You'll have different insurance carriers that have offered an exchange with their own plans. So the exchanges is a big word. It's whether or not the state's going to do it itself, I think, is going to remain to be seen. But I think that this is going to be something that, again, single source of entry. Everybody's going to be determined. That organization will determine the eligibility factors that are in place. So it's something that, in my opinion, I think that there's going to be a lot that will be still decided. I think for you all as employers, whether or not it makes sense to even be in that arena is going to be challenging. I still feel like, and we'll again get into this, I feel like there's going to be, for the most part, employers that are going to embrace where benefits fits in to their business. Again, the economy at some point in time will turn around, and there will be someone that will want to be best in class. So it doesn't mean that you're going to send everyone to the exchange and just say, this is the way we do things at this business. I don't know if that's exactly going to be the case. So the Small Business Health Options Program is also something that we talked about, generally up to 100 employees. In 2017, that can be something that will be offered to large employers. So I think that's going to be something that we'll see how that all, again, continues to come down. Is that going to be that one vehicle again to where all insurance is going to come out of? And is this going to be our somewhat privatization of healthcare as it relates to somewhat of a universal healthcare model? That's kind of the idea if we're going to be bringing large employers into this model too. So something to kind of think about.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Now, I'm only going to spend about 2 minutes on these premium tax credits. Basically, you can read it. We got final regulations. If you don't offer a plan, or if you don't offer an affordable plan, your certain employees that have a certain earnings above the poverty level can go out and they can get a premium credit through the exchange. Okay, and the exchange will have to track that. But if you have high-paid employees who say, hey, I don't want to be part of the plan, I'm going to be my own, I'm going to go to the exchange, I'm going to get that credit, no. You're going to have to qualify for the credit, okay? Also, too, when employers talk about this exchange, yeah, my employees are all going to, they're going to take advantage of that exchange. One key element is if those employees go to the exchange, that's all on an after-tax basis. They can't pre-tax any of their premiums. And the exchange probably won't be that much less expensive than what you're buying through your carrier today. So, on average, we believe through state, federal, FICA, the average savings, if you're doing it pre-tax in a cafeteria plan, is going to be 28 to 30% across the board. Go through the exchange, they're going to be paying 30% more because they don't get the pre-tax deduction. And Jim's going to show that in his analysis. Okay, here's the key. Here's in closing. Are we going to do pay or play? Are we going to continue to sponsor our plan? Well, you got to come up, we believe, with a 3 to 4 year strategy. Experiment with the 105H rules. Okay, 105H has been around since 1974 for self-insured plans. And these discrimination tests basically say you got to run these really complex tests. If you're going to have different eligibility, different waiting periods, you're going to charge different premiums. 99% of the people just ignore those rules because, well, we have some clients we've helped comply with those rules. Well, I hate to say it might have been a waste of time because no one from the IRS, no one from HHS, no one's been enforcing those rules. Well, now we have a new world that we're living in because the IRS, and part of this law is 105H will now apply to fully insured plans. They're redrafting those rules. We don't know what they're going to look like. But basically, the bottom line is, if you have different waiting periods, if you exclude classes, you charge different levels of premiums for different level of employees, that's going away. And if you do want to play with those rules, say, hey, my part-timers, I'm going to charge them full premium, and I'm going to only charge my full-timers half premium. That's going to be an issue, okay? You're going to have to do some testing.
Bill, and I know you said it, but I don't want it to get passed over. Mm-hmm. That was for self-insured plans.
Right.
Fully insured plans prior to this law change, and this always is a bad connotation, but you could discriminate.
Right.
You could do all those things that Bill just said.
Right.
These rules didn't apply to you. They are going to apply to you going forward.
Right. And then the other option you have is you may want to look to terminate your plan and see what that cost is going to be. Again, when you go into management and you got the CFO doesn't care about health insurance. He just like, hey, profits, got to pay the bank, got to take care of the line of credit, let's just get rid of health insurance. They're the bottom line guy, and you're the HR person saying, we've always offered health insurance, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we still live in this entitlement mentality, so we've got to offer something. Here's the chart. If you have high-value employees who expect this as part of their benefit package, you're going to have to continue to offer some type of health insurance. Now, over here on the far right, I'm in the pay margin. I'm going to pay the tax. I'm going to get out of it. If you manufacture widgets, and the only highly compensated employee of that company is the owner, and you have no skill, there's no appreciation of your health insurance, Your employees do not care at all if they have health insurance. They may all qualify for Medicaid, okay? Yeah, you may not want to sponsor a plan. You go through it and say, yeah, I'm going to pay the $2,000 tax and the other taxes, and it's going to be okay. And then there's the mix, the pay or play, saying, okay, now I got to do something in between. I got to raise my premiums. I got to raise my copays. I got to raise my deductibles because my competitors are doing that. Okay.
I would say, Bill, this is the slide. In my opinion, this is the where do you fall, where do you find yourself slide. You know, where are you as a company, and that's the piece that needs to be evaluated. This is the time to plan for that. This is the time to establish some type of strategic thought. As the one slide had mentioned, a 3 to 4 minimum plan. Start putting something together. From our perspective, we like to come out with some type of 3 or 4 year plan. And usually what happens is we get into some type of meeting, and most individuals will say, well, we don't want to do that now. We come out with some type of strategy. Maybe it's related to a high deductible health care plan. Too much back on the employees, the culture that won't work. Now you have the opportunity to blame the government, frankly. Blame the government to make those changes. Blame the government, and it's kind of a joke. It obviously failed, but that is something that I think is an important piece, though, to really start to evaluate. Now is the time to really strongly decide on how you want to view your company, how you should view your company. Where does your culture take benefits? How do they accept benefits? And then at the same time, design something that's in place. One thing I would say as far as strategies are concerned, we talked, and we didn't mention too much of this as far as cost containment strategies. If you're going to be in this arena, if you're going to decide to play, and you believe that benefits are critical in your world, that it's going to be critical for you to have that in place, look at doing some type of network benefit design. I know we've got some network initiatives that have taken place, some direct contracting. I know that there's some direct contracting that's going on here in Tulsa right now with a local hospital. Maybe there are ways in which you can look at those high-performance networks. You'll hear that with different carriers that you're with right now. You'll hear different carriers that will mention the high-performance network. Usually it's a smaller network of providers to some degree. Might be that they have a better benefit, or not a better benefit plan design, but a better reimbursement schedule as far as the physicians are concerned. But look for maybe those direct contracting opportunities. Look for value-based, look to design a value-based benefit plan design. That's been around for a number of years, but that value-based benefit plan design is basically putting more money at areas in your benefit plan that you want to accentuate. Maybe that's preventative, maybe that's wellness. Look at wellness opportunities. Look at again, high-performance networks, as we talked about. Accountable care organizations. These are types of the words that are associated with this law, with PPACA. But you'll see different companies now, different insurance carriers, it seems, partnering up now with hospitals that are really starting to pare down what they have available to you. I think you're going to start seeing that as well. You've got other opportunities. Again, you have other opportunities to contain costs, and I think that's important for us. I know we're running short on time, right, but I think it's important for us to start looking at that plan, put an action in place 3 or 4 years down the road. Look at your life and disability programs as well. Very good market for that too. You've got a lot of great opportunities, so we can talk about that later if you have any interest. So,
okay, we're going to wrap up. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and the next section, Jim and John are going to go through and do the calculations on how you determine whether you have 50 employees and do the pay or play tax.
Thank you all.